crafty friends, it's Jess from jesscrafts.com, and today I'm here with a video for Create a Smile stamps. When I was creating this card, I really just wanted to do some fun rainbow coloring and color up a set I had never used before, but also find a set that worked well for creating a rainbow with a critter. So I had to basically pick a critter that was one of the colors of the rainbow. So many critters are brown, gray, fur colors. But this frog from Create a Smile's Unfrogettable stamp set was perfect for my idea, especially because there's all these accessories of the mushrooms in the stamp set. I knew that I could make them multicolored and all the other colors of the rainbow without it looking odd because mushrooms do come in so many bright colors. So to color the frog, I used YG06, G07, G05. The YG06 was my lightest color, G07 the darkest. I started with my darkest color and I blended out to my lightest color, trying to leave a pretty generous highlight and trying to make sure that I did not go over the highlight area too many times. That if you go over the highlighted area too many times, it'll get darker and become less of a highlight and blend in too much. Although because the G05 and YG06 are pretty different, it actually helps to preserve the highlight and because it doesn't blend as well. But sometimes blending really well isn't exactly what you're looking for if you want that high contrast look of the obvious highlight and the darker shadows. So as I continued to color the frog, I continued to start with the darkest, but in these smaller areas, it was even more important to kind of be aware of keeping an area that stays light. So I tried to go in with just a touch of the G07 on the areas that would be darkest, like where his legs are tucked behind his body. But I also wanted to emphasize the dark shadows. And one way that I have found effective to do this is to color the whole image and then let it have a few seconds to dry and just very lightly touch the darkest marker into the shadow areas. And if you really don't like how that looks, like to kind of have that dark line, you can blend it out a bit with the medium color, but be careful about over blending that. If you really want those dark shadows, you have to be willing to have everything look less blended and instead emphasize those harder shadows. Because if you look at photographs, a lot of times they actually do have pretty clear, harsh shadows, and we're almost like kind of afraid to do that on images sometimes, but you can see that people who have like very professional looking coloring, sometimes they really do have those harder shadows, and that's what makes them stand out. So I encourage you to try to leave your darker shadows without blending them as much, and make sure they're just a little tiny touch of it at first, and that'll kind of like ease you into the idea of having these less blended out bits. For coloring the little pond that I also decided to make part of my rainbow, I'm going to use B04, 06, and B12. Again, I am choosing one of the markers to be quite a bit different than the others, so the B12, which is the lightest color, I could have gone with B02 and it might have blended a little bit more smoothly, but I was trying out this idea of making it such that the shadows and highlights were more dramatic. And that was part of the logic there. But also, you're not always going to have perfect blending groups and families, but a lot of times you can make it work as long as they aren't too different, or by doing the like tip to tip marker technique, or as I've been highlighting here, not worrying about them being as smoothly blended from one to the other. But there again, B06, my darkest color, I am coming in and just touching the edges after they've had a few seconds to dry and allowing those deeper shadows to exist and not blending them out too much. Finally, I'll color just one of the mushrooms. I'm going to use the same technique for all of them, and I'm also using simplified shadows and just putting the shadows on the outer edges of everything. It works really great for the mushroom because it allows the mushroom to have its natural rounded shape, but it also tends to be a simple way to color critters, allowing the edges of them to be darkest because generally critters have a sort of round, they have round faces, they have round bodies, the arms and legs. I mean, if you look at the arms and legs of most animals, they are a generally round shape. It gives them some dimension and allows you to make easy coloring decisions by just doing those simple, darkest on the edges shading types. I'm going to use our 14, 17, and 27, again going with a darker color that is considerably different than the other two markers. I had gone with my lighter color more different in the other ones, but either way can really emphasize that more dramatic coloring. I did decide to also cut out a black frame from the Create a Smile Magical Frame die. I really like this die because it's just perfect for highlighting a critter, and it just adds a little something because it has like that postage edge detail. It's not too plain, but it's not too feminine either. It's just a really like great neutral shape. All of my images I cut out with my scan and cut. You could also fussy cut out the images, and Create a Smile doesn't make coordinating dies. It's just something that they haven't decided to add to their line. So those aren't available, but fussy cutting is always a great option, and a lot of the images are pretty simple, and it makes fussy cutting, therefore, pretty simple. I'll add my frame overlapping the little puddle pieces. I said pond earlier, but it's definitely a puddle because it's just a little tiny splash there. But I think that's a really fun imagery for this set. If you wanted to mix things up a bit, you could do instead, to make the puddle make a bit more sense, you could do the frog in his rain jacket. I just thought that would pull the yellow into the green space and be less of a good rainbow look, but it's a really adorable image. You could also use the rainbow the frog who has the lily pad umbrella, and that way they could all stay green. I will add some of them with foam tape, some of the images with foam tape and some without, to add a little bit of interest to the scene. But before I add anything with foam tape, sorry, I'm tripping on my words today, I do want to stamp my sentiment. Once you add something with dimensionals, it will be that much harder to stamp a good sentiment, because with your, whether it's your stamp block or your MISTI, the block will kind of stop at where that dimension is, and you might not get a great image. So you can position things carefully to make it work later, but I think it's better to just stamp your sentiment first. And I'm working directly on my card base at this point because it is a clean and simple card. And I'm ready to complete the rainbow. So the blue pond was a natural element to add, but I needed to then make sure that the frog was to the left of it, and I created my frame around it. I kind of considered what that would mean for what would have to be to the left and right of the frame, and that's why I didn't center my frame, but instead left more room out to the left because I knew I'd have to incorporate a few colors out to the left. I'm going to pop up the frog, the purple mushroom, and the orange mushroom, basically kind of an every other thing. So every other one is popped up and every other one is flat, just to, again, make the scene a little bit more dynamic. And I am using a really thin foam tape, so it won't have any trouble going through the mail like that. And that's it for my card today. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you're interested in more crafting tutorials, be sure to subscribe to my channel. I will leave you a link to the Create a Smile blog, where you can check out this and other inspiration featuring Create a Smile stamps, as well as their latest challenge, which is to add texture to your card. Thank you so much for watching. Bye!